Thank you for joining today's event organized by Hong Kong Life Sciences Society. My name is Lotto and I'll be the MC for today's event. To start off with, I'd like to welcome today's three distinguished panel speakers, Ms. Lisa Cai, Dr. Celine Chan, and Dr. Lydia Leung, who would be sharing their experiences and insight gained so far in their life sciences career pathways. A brief introduction of our panel speakers. Ms. Lydia Cai is the Director of Pivotal Life Sciences and Public Investing at Fung Life Sciences. Prior to joining Fung Life Sciences, Ms. Cai has been in research analyst roles in various global investment platforms and hedge funds, including Agamemnon Capital and Morgan Stanley. Ms. Cai holds an MBA from the University of Pennsylvania and Bachelor of Sciences and Arts degree from the University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Celine Chan is the Chief Operating Officer at Centre for Novostics. Dr. Chan has over 10 years of experiences in the pharmaceutical industry, working at various capacities at major pharmaceutical companies, including GSK China R&D, Roche R&D Center, and Bristol Myers Squibb Pharma. Dr. Chan holds a PhD in biochemistry from HKU and an MBA from HKUST. Dr. Lydia Long is the Chief Executive Officer at Belun Technology, a company at the frontier of medical-grade screening devices and cloud-based AI platforms for sleeping disorder, respiratory and cardiovascular-related diseases. Prior to joining Belun Technology, Dr. Long has been a director at the Hong Kong Applied Science and Technology Research Institute for over 10 years. She holds a PhD and a Master of Philosophy in Electrical and Electronic Engineering from HKUST, as well as a Master of Science in Marketing from CUHK. Regarding the rundown of today's event, we'll start by learning more about their career experiences and the insights they gained working in the life science space and what advice they would give to the younger generation pursuing careers in life sciences. Then we'll move on to a chit-chat session, and finally we'll end with a Q&A session. Now, without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to our first panel speaker, Ms. Lisa Cai. Lisa, please.
Sure, thank you for the kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. Very happy to be on this panel today with the other two distinguished speakers. Let me share my screen very quickly and do let me know if you guys can see my screen. Okay. Can everyone? Okay, perfect. So I think to start with, I'll just give a quick intro about Fung Life Sciences, which is the life science investing platform that I'm a part of. And then after that, I'll just give a quick intro about, sort of my career trajectory and how did I come about in my current position and, some of the lessons along the way. So Fung Life Sciences is a global life sciences investment platform backed by the Fung Group with a $2 billion commitment. And this platform has invested in over 62 portfolio companies and in many different funds, really close to 30 different funds, and really have started global collaboration opportunities across both US as well as Greater China. And here you can see some of our portfolio companies and fund investments in the different regions, including in the US and in China, and actually some companies in Europe as well. And this platform really invests across the different stages of capital formation. What I mean by that is when you think about how a company gets started, it really started from incubation and seed. That's when you have a great founder with a great idea, but they may not even have any capital to begin with. And that's when you provide incubation and seed funding to really get things started and off the ground. And then you really move on to what we call venture capital stage. That's when a company is still private, so it's not listed on any stock exchange. The company is still growing and they need additional and incremental capital along each milestone and along the way. And then when a company gets to a certain stage, it becomes sort of growth capital and the public markets, which I manage. The public market is really when a company gets listed on the stock exchange, and you can see the ticker, you can see the different stock prices, and that's when a company really becomes, transfers from a privately owned company to a company that's really actually owned by public shareholders. So, both you and I can go out there and buy a share of the company and become a partial owner of company once it becomes public. And then we also do other fund investments. So it's really a comprehensive platform with capabilities across the entire life cycle of company formation and company management. So how did I get here? So I think my career trajectory is probably going to be a little bit different than most other speakers. I really come from the finance side of things. So after my undergraduate education, I started my career in private equity. And after that, when I moved on from the private equity side, and so that's really, if you look at the slide, really, sort of in the growth capital, and the private equity is not on here, but that's sort of the growth capital and post public market stage things. I moved on to focus on public market investments, and that's when I worked for the Chinese Sovereign Wealth Fund, based in Hong Kong, covering global healthcare companies that are in the public space. And that's really an opportunity where you get to look at the entire healthcare sector from a very broad view. So it's not just in terms of therapeutics, but really everything. So the med tech, therapeutics, managed care services. And then after that, I went to a hedge fund where I focused more on a smaller subsector, so really focused more on the biotech, specialty pharma, and sort of other more therapeutics focused companies. And then I joined Fung back in 2016 and had a focus again on the public market ever since. So a lot of people would say, oh, if you're on the investing side, so do you need to know a lot about, business, a lot about finance, and sort of, do I need to get an accounting degree or CFA before I can do sort of biotech or life sciences investing? And the advice I always gives is, you need to think about sort of what is your strength and what is your areas of development, right? I think for students in life sciences areas and disciplines, obviously your strength is your analytical capability, your technical understanding of the different analysis of the different sort of themes in life sciences. And that is actually the most important part in terms of when we think about doing diligence for life science investments. To give a very, very quick example, if we have a company that we're considering for venture capital investment, and the company may just have a drug molecule, but it's not even in the clinic yet, maybe it's being tested in some animals, or maybe it's not even, it doesn't even have animal data. It's really just a proof of concept in terms of, oh, I have a molecule and, I have done years of research about, how certain pathway will work. And I believe this molecule can address that pathway. So you think about, how to go about, that kind of diligence. Actually, a lot of that is really on the science and on the analytical analysis of, sort of different framework and different data. And it's a lot of stats, a lot of biology, and less so about like, oh, do I need to think about, the things that, I would see on a CFA exam. So, if that is your background and if that is your area of strength, that, that is the area that you should approach. And that is something that, you should really utilize when you enter the industry. But I think for students who come more from the business finance side, now, your strength capabilities are going to be from a different area. I mean, that's where, maybe you're really with very solid accounting background. Maybe you're very good at financial modeling. Maybe you are very good at, for example, another very important part for later stage company is, we have a product. How do we know how big the potential market is? So, we need someone that knows how to size the potential market opportunities. And that's really a different skill set. And there is really no sort of, oh, which skill set do I need? Or which one is more important or not. But I think whatever skill set you have, just find the entry point that matches with, your respective skill set. And the good thing about the life sciences investment industry is, we just cover such a broad spectrum of capital formation that I think regardless of whichever skill set you have, you're likely to be able to find something that would, really could utilize your current skill set. And then you really use that as a launch pad to learn, what else that you have not learned before in school or in your prior job experience. So, I'll stop right here and you're happy to answer any questions or, any happy to follow up offline as well, in terms of any questions you guys have about, potential career opportunities or different career paths. So I'll hand it back to the moderator.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your career journey with us. Next, let's pass on the time to Dr. Celine Chan. Celine, please.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here sharing with you my own experiences and the path I pursued. Of course, there are many different pathways within the life sciences depending on one's interests, skills, and background. While Lisa has talked about the investment world, my sharing will mainly focus on various options in the industry, particularly in the pharmaceutical or biotech industry, and how it differs from the academic path. So life sciences is a very highly specialized field. It might be easy for people with scientific background to enter the business world, but not vice versa, as business degree holders might not have the understanding about the underlying biology of a disease and processes, which are knowledge and skills that are essential to life science jobs. So at least for most of us in the audience, pursuing a life science already provides us with a stronger sense of job security. So to start off, let me show you a conventional pathway from drug discovery to drug product. It's a time-consuming and possibly an inefficient pathway. In this tightly regulated industry, a multinational company can hire people ranging from 1,000 employees in a small biotech to 200,000 employees in a pharmaceutical setting. So you can imagine all the opportunities out there. However, if you decide to join the industry, you have to bear in mind that although we always talk about patient outcomes and advancing scientific knowledge, but at the end of the day, one of the main goals of a business is profit making. So be ready to give up all the autonomy and academic freedom. So life sciences can be a rewarding journey where it requires ongoing learning and development. I chose this major because I had a strong desire to challenge the norm and make a difference to advocate healthcare, advance healthcare. At the time when I graduated from my PhD studies in Hong Kong, there weren't too many options for me except being a medical science specialist. At least that was what I thought at that time. I came across an opportunity to work in an R&D multinational pharma company, GSK, where they started to establish an R&D site in Shanghai. That was the time I learned about the translational science and where translating scientific discoveries into clinical application, that is, in this case, new drugs. Could you please click a few? Yeah, thank you. What struck me the most when I first entered the commercial world is that business decision is not only about pricing and sales revenue. Instead, there are clear objectives and critical paths to support the go, no-go decisions in the R&D investments. Please, we move quickly to another project if specific criteria have not been met. So the companies will drive the most promising project to product launch, where there are program managers who manage the portfolio and allocate resources according to the management decisions. These companies always collaborate with external partners where they see synergism. They also work closely with the academic world in all stages of the R&D processes, as they can tap into the academics' expertise and resources, particularly relying on the basic research discoveries, clinical trial designs, and patient recruitment. So in addition to the R&D in pharma, the commercial team also plays a significant role. After regulatory approval, that's the time when we talk about the commercial sector of the, that's the time when we talk about real product. Instead of being technically specialized, being in the commercial sector of the pharma, you actually have to be familiar with the local market and understand the market needs. Traditionally, it's quite common to say that you probably only need a bachelor degree to enter into sales and marketing, whereas only the R&D requires typically highly skilled professionals with advanced degrees in the field. But with the emphasis on personalized medicines, the impression on medical sales have also been changed. When I first left Shanghai and returned to Hong Kong, I had been a medical science liaison and medical writer, where I was responsible for educating the market before the product launch. These positions usually require you to have an advanced degree, as the critical thinking training might become handy. These positions usually, as I said before, pharma is a highly technical and complex field. If you are selling Ferrari, you will not need to be an expert or engineer when you are facing a directly a customer. But selling a drug to product to clinicians, you have to speak their language, be able to understand the product and interpret the data. My PhD training actually provided me with an edge to quickly become a commercial lead in Hong Kong, to lead a team to strategize and drive the sales uptake for the product in Hong Kong. So after you have gained the depth of knowledge and gained the experience in the industry, you can always climb up the ladder in a specialized area. Perhaps in 10 years, one can become a director in your field. So I must say that the translational whole research pathway is not linear anymore, with the importance of personalized medicine to drive healthcare outcome. It requires people with scientific knowledge to see the connections, bring the significance of clinical observations by clinicians, and raise the questions back to the laboratory setting, and the cycle keeps continuing. Thus, communication, collaboration, and teamwork are key components to achieve the goals. Next slide, please. So honestly speaking, I got most of my job offers previously from referrals and connections. I learned the word weak ties when I was doing my MBA, where I can put my experiences into perspectives, while strong ties, such as close relationships with friends and family, they are important for emotional support. Whereas for weak ties, those are for most distant or casual relationships are more valuable in terms of providing access to new information and actually opportunities. So never underestimate what you could achieve at any networking events. Take the opportunity to meet people outside your own circle, cultivate weak ties, and gain insights into and introductions to opportunities. Next slide, please. So there is no perfect way to build your network, but I'd like to share with you some of my experiences. It's really important to attend networking events and conferences. You always have to be prepared to know how to pitch yourself, as you always have only 1 minute to make an impression. Active listening is another skill you want to practice. Listen to what the other person is saying, and definitely rewarding them by raising more thoughtful questions to show your interest. It's also important to follow up, as building the network needs time and efforts. We move to a digital era, so LinkedIn is another resourceful way for you to keep your weak ties and stay connected easily. Next slide, please. So to close, there are many paths to success in the industry. In addition to patient outcomes, business decisions and maximizing profit is always the priority, no matter what roles you are playing in. It's important to take the time to explore your options and find the path that's right for you. Work on your strengths and improve upon your weaknesses. I can't emphasize more that pursuing a life science career is a journey. Regardless of what career path you end up in, be prepared to be a lifelong learner and focus on building a strong foundation of knowledge and skills. Throughout this constantly changing journey, you would be able to acquire transferable skills and advance in different ways depending on the path you pursue. In the industry, collaboration is a successful factor, as we can always tap on each other's expertise and resources. Nonetheless, don't forget about your weak ties. So I pass this back to the moderator.
Thank you, Celine. Our next speaker, Dr. Lydia Leung, will share her story of developing her own startup.
Okay, so you can see my full screen, right? Okay, yeah, today's what I'd like to share with you is about my journey from how after I graduated from PhD, from changing from an applied research institute and to get into form my own startup together with my colleagues. I think the moderator has introduced my background a bit. And basically, I think like lots of you here, I got all my education in Hong Kong. And after I got my PhD, I start my research journey in an applied research institute in Science Park. I was there for 11 years. from starting my own group performing applied research in medical device and technology. After that, I formed my own startup with my team from S3 back in 7 years ago. So basically, after leaving S3, I would say the startup journey is the most exciting journey that I have experienced in my career. Because back then we just have maybe 3 to 4 colleagues together in a room which is just about 100 square feet, and getting all this 3D printer, all the stuff inside a very small space in an industrial building in Fortan. Okay, and then since then, we at that moment, I think we are silly enough because we set our aim to be very high, because we search for creating a brand new wearable medical device, which need all kind of certification from FDA to ISO to perform all the clinical study. And even more crazy is that at that moment, we have an idea is not only making the hardware, but more important is to build our own AI, especially for the application in medical diagnosis for sleep apnea and also insomnia. But I would say the journey is pretty fruitful. We throughout the journey in the past 7 years, with our platform, we have won a lot of international awards from design to technology. And then we have go through a lot of ups and downs, of course, because we need to raise funds in order to sustain and to get our device go through all kind of certification and also clinical study. And you can see throughout this year, there is always ups and downs, but that's why I say the journey is very exciting. And so when a lot of graduates ask me about whether we should have our own startup, if we have a good idea, my answer will always say, why not, right? Because this is a life experience that unless, I always tell people, you jump into the ocean, you never know how to swim. Okay, but of course, before you jump into the ocean, you have the basic skills to swim. Otherwise, you will die very easily, right? And so we are just 2 weeks ago, we are very excited to get the world first FDA clear wearable ring with AI directly for the sleep apnea diagnosis. And it is a very exciting news to our company, which allow us to expand quite aggressively in the US. And also, of course, the years ago, we also get some clearance in Southeast Asia and also Taiwan for our hardware. But getting also the AI for the diagnostic purpose is a very exciting news after 7 years of hard work with all our team members and also founders. And so what I'd like to share with you today is a lot of people would like to ask me about after getting the PhD, why I will getting into area of medtech and why I will left the Applied Research Institute and to form my own startup. And I always share with people is that as I share with you, is always need to learn to swim before you get into the ocean. But you get into the ocean is because you really want to experience the whole journey. And for the 11 years when I was in the research institute, I basically learned a lot, because when I was in university, basically I was just doing some fundamental research. But when I get into the applied research, what you need to do is you really need to work with the industry to understand their needs and to solve the problem they have, and also how to translate a fundamental research into real application in the real world. So throughout that 11 years when I was in S3, I have built up a lot of industrial network. As the previous speakers has mentioned about, it's very important to get network. It's not just about relationship, especially like myself, when we form our startup, we are much quicker than the others. Why? Because we have connection with some manufacturing line and factory already. We know about how to file a patent. And also we know how to get our ISO 13485 certified, especially for medical field area. And also we do know how to get our help. And this will speed up every process when we have our own startup. So there is always pros and cons for you to, after you graduate, you immediately form your startup, or you're working in the industry for a few years to gain some experience before you form your own startup. But I always encourage people to form the startup early. The reason why is because honestly, you having a startup is not because you want to be your own boss, right? You form a startup is because you have a passion, you want to realize something and achieve your vision and mission. So instead of you can much more free, if you form your own startup, basically you need to continuous work for 7 days, 24 hours almost. Okay, and that is the passion that you have in order to grow your startup and to make things happen. So it's very important for you to have the psychological preparation if you really want to form your own startup. And also one point very important is why networking and making friends while you are in studying is very important, is because always, especially if you form your own startup, you need multidisciplinary expertise, especially in the medical field. Like in our company, we have graduates from mechanical engineering, electronic engineering, physics, computer science, business people, and you need all this kind of talents in order to get a product which is really needed in the market. And it's not just about technology, right? It is good to have a good technology, but whether the product can be sold in the market is just all depends on the market needs. So the marketing people, business people, and the technical team need to work hand in hand. And that's why you have a good communication skill is also very important. And I always tell people when I first got my first seed funding, I'm just holding a plastic which is non-functional, and then I get the first lot of money into the company. I just sell an idea which is not existing. Okay, but how you can do this is all through the communication and experience that you have. And of course, if you have some industrial experience, you will also build your own reputation. And in the industry, when you get out there and you present people, you know that, wow, I can trust what Lydia has told me. And probably it will be delivered. And that is very important because this is your own branding. And this is also important when you are studying, then you need to build your own brand already. And you need to be very committed to do what you promise. And then another thing very important is doing different kind of project is also very important, because in order to get things work, I would say what is most important is the teamwork, because you won't be able to know everything, but how you can link people with different talents to set together such that they can work together is very important. And secondly, just like what HKLSS doing is every year I got some summer interns. And this is very important is because being a summer intern, you will be able to know how MNC work, how a startup work. It's totally different culture. It just all depends on what you know and what you want to do and your own character, and to determine what kind of career path that you would like to know. So basically, to be part of the wheels when you are during education or studying, and so that you would like to know throughout in the machine what kind of path that you would like to be and how to run everything. Yeah, so this is a very quick introduction what we have done. And so as one of the speakers say, LinkedIn is very important. So if you want to know more about me or our company, then you can just through the LinkedIn and add us. Yeah, pass the time back to the moderator.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you for sharing all your experiences, tips, and what you've learned over the years. It's incredible to hear about your wealth of experiences and insights you have shared from working in the life science sector here today. I personally also have a few questions for you and would love to hear your thoughts on them. To begin with, I have a question for all our panel speakers. Perhaps we can start off with Lydia. The question is, how do you see the prospect of life science industry in Hong Kong?
I think it's not only in Hong Kong, but worldwide. I think life science has a very good prospect and will have a pretty good career path, because every one of us know that aging population is an issue, right? How to help people not only to live longer, but live healthier is a very important mission. So it can involve a lot of things, from genetic engineering to farmers to supplement to device, to monitoring, and to prediction, how to let people know whether they are in good health. And all this need techniques and know-how in life science. So I would say this area will continue to boom and need more and more talent in this particular area.
I see. Thank you for your sharing. For the two panelist speakers, does anyone have a preference on who would like to go first?
Okay, I can go first. So I can echo more to Lydia's because of the aging population. I think that's such a huge demand, and because of the prevalence, increasing prevalence of chronic disease, the demand in healthcare services is definitely growing rapidly worldwide. And then I think for Hong Kong itself, there's a lot of growth potential as well, because for the government, I think, as I mentioned during my talk, I feel that in the past 10 years, the government has been putting a lot of emphasis on the translational research and how to make translate the basic discovery into commercialization. So like recently, the government has put in a lot of investment, like $10 billion to support some research centers to perform commercialization. This is one of my I'm working at the Center for Novostics. We are one of the center where the government has funded us to perform research over the next 5 years, and the outcome is to do more commercialization.
Yeah, I'll add, I definitely echo Lydia and Celine in terms of the optimism for life sciences industry. I think, especially I think you look at pharmaceutical research as well. I mean, we are at a stage where we're going to see a lot of breakthroughs, right? I mean, FDA just approved the first drug for geographic atrophy. We're going to have another drug approved probably, later this year, next year. We're going to have the first drug approved for NASH. We're going to have the first drug approved for, many indications that, we have not have been able to find therapies for the past, several decades. So it's definitely a very exciting time for life science industry. But I would say one thing for Hong Kong in particular is, we do see these life sciences hubs globally, right? We see in Boston, which I'm actually currently at for a conference, and we in China we see it around Shanghai and really the Changchun Delta area. I think it's important for Hong Kong to gradually become one of those hubs, and that really requires the entire ecosystem of talents and just the surrounding support, right? Because I think one thing that one question I was thinking asked is, well, Hong Kong, like you have great universities and you have great researchers, but how come you don't really have all these surrounding, you don't have a lot of pharma companies have their research up in Hong Kong, and you don't have, a lot of different job opportunities per se for young graduates. And I always say, these things take time, right? You can, Hong Kong historically has been a financial center, and you don't go from being a financial and real estate center to become a biotech hub in 3 years. And it's something that takes time. And I think that's why this is great that we have organizations like HKLSS, and it's great that, we have our panelists and all the students logging on, because I think the realization that those opportunities can be there and, it is actually a viable path is a very important start for Hong Kong to, gradually become one of those hubs and to really start building out that ecosystem so we can retain talent, in the city. So, we can foster, really young students to pursue, different areas within life sciences.
Thank you, Lisa. Just to add another question to you, no pressure, but I understand you mentioned about this before in your presentation, but just to expand on this topic, for a fresh graduate from science school, do we need any business-related background or knowledge to pursue a career in investment or venture capital company?
Yeah, I would say it really depends on what investment role you're going for. If you're going for a job, for example, at investment banking or at private equity that has a higher level of requirement for things like financial modeling, basic understanding of accounting, then not necessarily you need a degree, but you probably do need to spend some time reading up on those things. So you at least have a basic concept of, what is a balance sheet, right? What is a cash flow statement? Just very basic things. And I always tell people, it's not something that you necessarily need to get a degree for or study CFA for. I mean, this is something that, you can actually learn by yourself. And all this knowledge is actually very, is much less academic and theoretical, is much more applicable and much more sort of, used in actual daily business transactions. But, if you're focused really more on the venture capital side, where you're doing diligence on very early stage companies, frankly, there isn't much finances look at. I mean, a lot of times as mentioned, you see a great founder, like Lydia, and you have a great concept, but you don't even have a lot of times, you don't even have a product prototype, you don't even have a molecule, but you have a great founder with years experience in research, and that's what you're backing, right? So you're really judging on different things. You're judging on the quality of the founder, you're judging on the validity of the scientific research, the idea behind it, and that's a very different skill set than someone who would pick up in business school. So what I tell students is always make sure the very important thing is always know yourself very well and know what you don't know, and try to align your skill set with the opportunities. And I know it's easier said than done, and is by no means is I think any career path had their own challenges, but that's really important to just align your skill set. So the short answer is no, I don't think you necessarily need a business background. In fact, all the interns were taken through the internship program. I don't think any of them have a formal business education background, but they all have done very well over the past 3 summers that we have taken our summer interns.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm sure a lot of our audience here is very glad to hear your sharing and insight on this question. To Celine, could I ask, what was the most difficult about changing your career path from a scientist to a management role?
I would say stepping out of my comfort zone and really letting go of what I'm good at and doing all the hands-on work, because I had to shift my focus from doing all the technical work into developing my management skills. So nowadays I work closely with the researchers to manage the resources, collaboration agreements, patent administration, and plan resources according to their needs and objectives. So I think it's just another way of collaborating with the people with my basic understanding on all the scientific roles. Yeah, I would say stepping out of my comfort zone and stepping up, it's the most difficult part.
I see. Thank you for sharing. To Lydia, could I ask, what is the most essential element required for those who want to develop a startup in life sciences or in the biotech industry?
I would say you must have the passion and also the commitment, as I shared before. Especially people always tell me that, well, I have my own startup, so I would like to work any day I would like to work, and I have my free time. But indeed, as I share, it is the opposite. Yeah, honestly, when I was founding this startup, is because I believe in Hong Kong. We have the best school of engineering. We have the best medical school. So together with all the graduate and local trained engineers here, I would like to see whether we can also form our successful startup in Hong Kong. And that is one of the reasons that why I come out to join this, because a lot of people, when they heard about, wow, you are a director in S3 while living there with a stable income and with good holidays. And I told them that if I don't leave S3, at that moment, I will be retired there, because I will not never step out of my comfort zone. So when you are wanting to form your own startup, very important you ask yourself whether you would like to sacrifice some of your personal time and to chase for some dream together with your team members. But I always told people, in order to run a good startup, very important is your starting team. They must share your dreams. They must share the passion that you have. And I'm very lucky enough, in the past 7 years, I have none of my starting team members have left the company. we work in very good shape, even though in the middle we will have different opinion and how to pursue and how to reach our goal. But still, we respect each other and we know the dream and the passion that we are shooting for. And so if you would like to form your own startup, very important first thing is not only a good idea, is how you get a good team. And it can be your classmate, it can be someone that you met in the events by HKLSS. And that's why networking is very important, because you need to know people from different fields in order to have your own startup.
Thank you, Lydia. I really like how your answer kind of ties back to your presentation on networking, the importance of networking and connect. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We will now open the floor for everyone to ask questions. If you have got any questions, feel free to press the raise hand button or type it in the chat box. We got a question from one of our audience, from DL. May I ask, how long do the speakers think it will take for Hong Kong to become a biotech hub? If anyone wants to start, or
Sure, I'll start that since I started the idea. I mean, look, this is not, as much as this is not something that, you know, you build over past couple of years. And I think one, you know, the easiest way to look at is, you know, look at other biotech hubs that are already formed. I mean, Boston, you know, really go back to the 1970s. I think when, you know, the city started doing some genetic engineering, I think the first major company here was Biogen. And you know, that's really back, all the way back to the 1970s, the 80s. Not saying that it's going to take 50 years for Hong Kong to become biotech hub, and not saying that, you know, oh, there's like nothing here, you know, before we reach that, but you can be part of the process, right? I mean, you know, I think it's actually very excited to be part of something that's getting built. I mean, obviously, you know, once the ecosystem is built, it doesn't make a lot easier for the future generations of students to, you know, participate and whatnot. But you know, now the government clearly has signaled, you know, their support. I mean, I think both in terms of policy as well as, you know, this very genuine fiscal support for, you know, this initiative. And it makes sense. I mean, Hong Kong has great world-class research universities, and you know, Hong Kong has great infrastructure. Is a very easy hub now that we're finally open to travel in and out. So it's actually a great landing place for a lot of multinational pharmaceutical companies to, you know, come here and then do the research. And Hong Kong also, I think, is unique from mainland China and surrounding areas. You know, the jurisdiction, the legal system is, I mean, all those things are actually very conducive for, you know, something building a technology research ecosystem. So I would say the short answer takes a long time, but, you know, do not be discouraged, and you definitely be part of it.
Yeah, I basically agree with what Lisa has shared. I think I have been in the research field from applied research to startup in the past 20 years. I think this is the most golden moment for Hong Kong if you would like to start your own journey, because we really got very good government support. Indeed, I have traveled very frequently among Southeast Asia and US in order to expand our business. And when I set up office overseas, Hong Kong is the most open one to everyone, to talents. And the funding is, no matter it is found by local Hong Kong or overseas, they are all supported. And this can create a very good atmosphere and ecosystem for Hong Kong in this particular aspect. And so I would say Hong Kong is starting catching up in this particular area, especially with more effort to put in. And more important is we are not only in Hong Kong, but also we can station in Hong Kong as a test bed, and then we can look into worldwide and also mainland China as our big market for our technology. So I think Hong Kong is taking up already. It's not taking a couple of years to become a very mature one, but we are taking up, I would say.
is there anything you would like to add to that, Celine, or should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I basically think it's pretty much that Hong Kong is catching up a lot lately. From at least when I graduated, it's so much different now, the whole situation, the whole ecosystem. So I would expect it will just get better.
So we have two more questions from Winnie. So the first question would be, I'll give one question and then we can move on to the second. So the first question is, what challenges have you faced when you moved up the career ladder? I appreciate your advice on identifying our strengths and building our network. Any further tips on how we can better prepare ourselves for that? Should we start with Celine this time?
Okay. I think taking up a management role is very difficult compared to managing an experiment because you face daily. Everyone is acting differently and everyone has emotions all the time. So it's very difficult to manage people. But what I learned throughout the time is that I have to really listen to what they say. Even for all my subordinates, I have to listen to what they say, don't have to say, and listen to really coach them instead of telling them what exactly you need to do. So that's what I've learned throughout the time when I start taking up, moving up my career ladder. And right.
Yeah, so maybe I add on a little bit on here. Yeah, I totally agree that communication skill and presentation skill is very important, and all of this need practice, and practice basically make perfect. And another tips is that I think everyone should think about you walk an extra miles. And this is what I usually do when I start my career. I start as an engineer and I joined S3. And I was, when I left there, I was a director. And basically, I worked until very late when I was even at S3. And people always question me that, wow, work so late in a government organization, right? But to me, it's not just about work. It's all about the experience that I can gain and that what I can experience there. And you should treasure every opportunities that you can learn something new and to learn from other talents. And that's what you always do. And even up till now, today, I think I also learn from my colleagues. And turning on your learning modes every moment is very important in order to have a better achievement.
Would you have anything to add, Lisa?
I think it's very well covered, but I think maybe just quickly, I definitely echo on what the other two panelists said. I think it's very important that you will always be prepared to learn new things because it doesn't matter where you start. I mean, there will be times in your career where you have to learn something completely new or pick up a completely new skill set. I mean, even I think looking back, sort of my investment career, I mean, I know people think that investing is like one thing, but, if you switch from looking at like large cap pharmaceutical companies to, biotech, and that's a very different skill set. Or, if you spend past 3 months looking at oncology companies and now you're actually looking at ophthalmology companies, there's another different, skill set and information. And it's very important that always make sure you maintain the curiosity and the ability to learn and absorb new things and maintain the enthusiasm for your job, right? I mean, otherwise it's very hard to, it's not just the hours you work, but all the hours outside of work that you're actually reading and making sure that you're up to date on the latest informations.
We have a second question from Winnie. It's about women in the life science sector. So there are discussions around the global challenges faced by women in the workplace. For example, pregnancy, discrimination, gender pay gap, etc. How do you think about the situation in Hong Kong life science ecosystem? Would Lydia like to start?
Yeah, this is the always question that we'll encounter in a female panel. But I always tell people when you are doing your job or starting your career, no need to think about whether you are male or female. Yeah, that's very important because you must be confident enough is that you are the same. You can do as good as them. And this is the very first thing is you have confidence in yourself. And I also want to share is I feel I'm very lucky to be born in Hong Kong and brought up in Hong Kong and have my career in Hong Kong. Because among all the Asia countries that I have visited, I think Hong Kong female is very well expected in the society and also in your career. And I seldom heard about, at least in Hong Kong, the pay will be different because of gender. So I think you need to be confident on yourself, on your own ability. And I think it's all what you can achieve, how you can appreciate it.
I think there are more recognition in the biotech ecosystem to promote diversity and inclusion in the industry as well. So I don't see much of a difference, including the pay, because when I offer different salary to people, I wouldn't discriminate because of their gender. So basically, it's all about their capabilities and their knowledge and how they would contribute to the company.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think two things. I think one is, I also discourage students from thinking about, they're male or female. I think at the end of the day, your performance speaks for themselves, and and performance should be gender blind, right? It doesn't matter you're male or female. I think your job performance, it should be what it is. And the second point is, I think we're lucky that Hong Kong actually has pretty comprehensive labor laws to protect. I mean, Hong Kong actually has very decent, for example, like maternity leave laws, legislations, and laws regarding equal pay. So I think if it gets to that, hopefully you don't get to the stage where you need to look into those laws. But if it gets to that, it's actually a pretty I would say. Both from a legal system perspective as well as from a cultural perspective, Hong Kong is this actually not a main problem, I would say, for Hong Kong relative to a lot of other places, frankly. And lastly, I think there is the more sort of subtle question of not like outright discrimination, but sometimes, like for example, like women at work, maybe you feel like if you're only girl, you're being left out of like some like networking events and whatnot. And I would say just stick your neck out, right? Don't, if you want to if you have an opinion, if you want to get a mentor, if you want to sort of make yourself heard, then do that, right? Don't be discouraged, and definitely don't be intimidated. But yeah, I would totally agree with the other two panelists. I think luckily that this is not a huge issue in Hong Kong.
Because of time restraint, I feel like there are two questions from the audience that are quite similar about like what the question would be: what experience should a science student who wants to break into a healthcare investment industry should have? Are there any tips? And it feels more directed towards Lisa. So would Lisa like to answer that question?
Sure. I think a couple of things. I think I think consulting. It's not that it's a better starting point or not. A lot of these are opportunity driven, frankly, and also market driven. Like for example, right now, we are just going through a bit of a correction in the public markets and general market sentiment. So maybe there are not that many job opportunities available, at the investment banks or some of the investment firms. But so I would say, if you can find a job at a consulting firm that also actually teach you a lot of the same skill set in terms of diligence, in terms of financial modeling, in terms of the different things like market size and corporate development, then definitely go for that. And is it better to start with corporates and industries? It's really the same answer, right? I mean, you find a job that you think, because you really need to round out your skill set to become a good investor and have an understanding of different parts of the industry. So since you're just starting as a fresh graduate out of school, I think any job that will let you sort of build out any one of those different skill sets, whether corporate or whether it's this professional skill set, finance, consulting, I mean, all those are good starting points. And I think that there's one sort of misconception is, if that's what you're interested in, then you need to get there, at day one. And you really don't. I mean, I think it's really important to build out industry knowledge and experience and different perspectives before, you consider becoming a sort of a more seasoned investor.
Because of the time limit, we're gonna go for a question from Kaifan, and then we're gonna go to Winnie, who raised her hand earlier. So the question from Kaifan is, what is the biggest difference between becoming an academic researcher and joining an industry that's related to biology research? Would Celine or Lydia like to go first?
Maybe Celine first.
I think during my sharing, I also think the most important, or at least what struck me the most, is the business side of things. Because in the industry, what we are always talking about profit making. And that's why the decision on how you approach a problem will be different from an academic researcher. For an academic researcher, you always have the flexibility or intellectual freedom to do whatever you want to, and always find you always have the funding to do whatever you want. But but in the industry, basically you're pretty you have to go for and go no-go decisions. There are always critical paths that refrain you from doing something even further, exploring further. And that that I would say intellectual freedom, not really intellectual, at least academic freedom, that would be the biggest difference.
Yeah, I pretty agree with Celine in this area. Originally, I also just planned to go out for the industry for a few years and then go back to university to do academic research. But the issue is that after I get into the industry, I found that the pacing is totally different, and it is very exciting when you're getting into the industry, although there's much more challenges. And finally, I do not find that I would like to go back to academia just for paper publication, even though I still publish medical paper currently. Yeah, but it just depends on your character. But I always encourage people before you get into the academia after your PhD, it is always good to get into the industry. To know something, to open up your mind, because I told myself I've been in academia for 10 years already. So I have no more new ideas for the direction that I would like to do the research. And that's the reason why I get into the industry, to get inspired. But finally, after I get into industry, I don't want to go back. So it all depends on your character, that whether you are a people who like to work with other people. So it depends.
Okay, I think because of the time limit we have here, yes, I think because of the time limit here, we would wrap up today's event here. And if any of the audience would like to ask any additional questions to our amazing panel speakers today, please feel free to email HKLSS and we'll forward your questions to them. Thank you everyone for all your questions as well. Once again, a big thank you to all our amazing panel speakers for their insightful sharing, and thank you everyone for joining today's event. I hope you found today's event rewarding. If you want to gain first-hand experience in life science or biotech industry, don't miss the HKLSS Life Science Summer Internship Program. This 6-week internship programs will be held in Hong Kong and Shanghai this year. Please visit HKLSS website for details. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and looking forward to seeing you at our future events. Have a good evening.